So now that we understand some of the basic methods of creating shapes, let's look at how we can modify these shapes once we've made them. So the first thing I'll do here is I'll start with the rectangle shape tool and just drag out a rectangle like normal. However, if we want to create a perfect square, we hold down the Shift key on our keyboard before we begin to click and drag, and now you can see that we're constrained to a perfect square. Likewise, if we start with the oval shape tool and we click and drag, you can see that we can create ovals. However, if we hold down the Shift key before we begin to click and drag, you can see that now we're constrained to perfect circles. In addition to that, if we come over to the Layer Adjuster tool, we're going to be able to modify each layer as we would normally be able to do by simply clicking and moving it. However, you'll also see that we have these handles, and these handles are going to allow us to modify this shape in various different ways. So to begin with, on the sides and on the top and the bottom here, you see that we have this sort of scale, and this is going to allow us to scale it with the opposite point being the origin of that scale transformation. So if we go on to the handlebar of the corner, you can see that now we're able to scale in a non-uniform way, like so, around the opposite corner point. So if we come over here, you'll see it goes around the opposite corner point. If we hold down the Control key as we hover over that corner point, you can see that our icon changes and now we have a rotate. So now I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. And then if we go ahead and hold down the Control key as we're hovering over one of the sides or the top and the bottom, you'll see that we get a skew icon. This is going to allow us to skew that shape. Now, in addition to that, if we come over here, you'll see that these are layers just like any other layer, and they do have access to the various different composite methods. Now, it's important to note that the composite method will only affect the fill and not the stroke. So if we come over here and we select default, now that we have the composite methods highlighted, and that's where our focus is, we can simply use the up and down arrows to cycle through this list to see all the various different composite methods that are available to us. I think I'm going to go ahead and choose to use the hard light. So I want to go ahead and get rid of the stroke because remember, strokes are not affected by our various different composite methods. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to double click on this and I'm going to turn off the stroke in the Set Shape Attributes dialog and hit OK. And now you can see that I'm able to continue manipulating this in space, doing whatever I want to, using the various different tools. So I'll hold down the Control to change this. And now we're able to just continue moving this. And at the same time, that shape is more or less invisible. And all we see is the effect of it through the hard light composite method. Now, in addition to that, we have various different options that are available to us in that Set Shape Attributes dialog. And to begin with, we'll just go ahead and double click on this layer again to open up that Set Shape Attributes dialog. And you'll see that we can change the name of that shape. We can adjust that stroke, so we can change the opacity of the stroke, and this is independent of the layer opacity, which is controlled by the fill opacity here. And we can also change the width of that stroke. So if we want something really thin, we can make it very thin. If we want something very thick, we can make it very thick. And that's interesting. Let's go ahead and hit OK on that. Now let's go ahead and go down to rectangle here, and let's zoom way in on this guy. So I'm just going to zoom in, make sure that I have my focus on my artwork here. And then I'm going to hold down the spacebar and come over like so that we can see this corner point. Now the reason why I zoomed way in is so you can really see what's about to happen. So let's go ahead now and double click on that layer, and you can see that we have the ability to control the stroke, opacity, and width like we talked about previously. But underneath that, you'll see that we have this different set of icons, and these last three here are going to control this corner point. So the first we have here is a squared off corner that's normal by default. If we want a rounded corner, we just click on that and now the corner is rounded off. If we want a beveled corner, we click on that icon and that'll bevel that off. Now, in addition to that, if we were wanting to work with something like, say, a line segment, so I'm just going to hit OK here and grab the pen tool and begin to create a line segment like so. So there's a line segment. And you can see here that we have these sort of flat ends of this line segment. If we double click on this shape, you'll see that we have the same options here for opacity and width, and maybe I'll make the width of this maybe fatter so that you can really see what's about to happen. We can't really control this through the corner points because there's really no corners on this shape. But these first two icons are about the end points. So this first one here is going to make the end round. The second one is going to add a square cap past the end of that line segment. So you can choose whichever one you like. I tend to like the rounded ends here because it looks a lot more like the way a tech pen would look if you're working with traditional media. So those are some of the basic shape attributes, and we'll come back to those later. But I wanted you to understand that there's lots of ways that we can modify and tweak out these shapes to meet whatever criteria we have, in addition to the basic creation of those shapes.